It's the Time Excellence Show, episode 102. Hi, I'm Douglas Calvin, and on Time Excellence Show, we prospect for time. We have got a great show today, and welcome again. Episode 102, we're going to be talking about time tips, those time-crunched hotspots that are there, and we're going to find out, are we in one of those? On their real-time segment, Jacq is going to tell us about a 70 to 80 hour work week and give us some recommendations, and we're going to see, does that make sense for us? And finally, in our Make More of a Difference, Barbara gives charity haircuts, a great example, a motivational example, and I can't wait to get to that one. So just relax and welcome on board. Time tips. You know, last time we talked about time crunched, and we learned that time crunched means that we don't have enough time to get done what we really want to accomplish. And in this segment, we're going to look at the hotspots. You know, where is it even worse? What categories of people or combinations of life events do we really get a hotspot in those areas? Who is more prone? Who is more prone to a hotspot than anyone else? Although we have to remember, anyone can be time crunched, anyone at all. The Gallup survey we learned about before was that a huge proportion, 48% of adults, feel time crunched. They feel that they don't have enough time to do what they need to get done. But there are groups that have even more issues. 48% is a low number for them, and we're going to take a quick look at those. Okay, hotspot number one. 61%, now that's a lot more than the 48%. 61% of working adults feel that they don't have enough time. So there's our first hotspot. Working adults, the time pressure in that group, there are more people in that group that are time pressured. They don't feel they have enough time. Second hotspot, the same percentage, 61% with children younger than the age of 18. They feel they don't have enough time. So it seems to make sense when you look at it. Well, if I've got children and they're younger than 18, there's a lot of time tied up in that responsibility. So the number is, again, 61%. Three of these matched up to 61%. A little bit odd, but I guess odd things happen. So hotspot 2, children younger than 18. And hotspot number 3 is young females. 61% of people who are female and 18 to 49 years old feel that they just don't have enough time. Well, if you're in those groups, you have a higher probability of being in the time crunch category. But it doesn't mean you have to be in those. There are some unhotspots too, areas that don't have as high a percentage. They're below the average. And one of those that bears highlighting is that 21% of people 65 and older feel they don't have enough time. So 21% is a whole lot less than 48%. So I think we're feeling the retirement age there. When people start moving out of the workforce, which was a hot spot. Then there's the epicenter of time crunch. So we take what we've just learned and we look at, are you in any of these, and combine them. So if you are female and 18 to 49 years old, and if you have children younger than 18, and if you are working, you are really in a high epicenter. That is almost guaranteed time crunch if you can go through all those and not be time crunched, that is an absolute amazement. And it wasn't in the data, but I can fully expect we could add one more. If you are female and 18 to 49 with children younger than 18 and working and single, that is even more pressure. That wasn't a category in the study, but you can imagine people that are single cannot share some of those responsibilities as much. So we can really sit there and appreciate the challenge of those time crunched areas. We will be back in just a moment for the next segment. Time excellence, the key to making more of a difference today by maximizing time for organizational, career, and personal achievement. We invite you to join us for each episode of the Time Excellence Show to write an even brighter chapter in your life. One of hope, growth, and purpose. The Time Excellence Show, prospecting for time together. Real time. Let's get where the rubber hits the road. Real stories of real people. And Jacq tells us of about a 70 to 8 hour work week and gives some advice. And we're going to test it to some of the time excellence principles and see if it makes sense for us. Can we learn from this? And that's the hope, is that we can learn from each other on occasion and find out what works and what doesn't. Well, here's what Jacq says. I've been a working single parent for 25 years. Well, right off the bat, we hit some of those hot spots we just learned about. Working and single parent. So the parent, the single, the working is all things that will add to a time crunch situation. Some of those years working real 78 to 80 hour weeks. So 70 to 80 hours, and she references that she does time logs. So the time logs are there, and those time logs are validating that says, hey, I'm not just feeling this. I'm not just making this up. I've got evidence. And so that's the amount of time crunch. You can just feel how she feels, is that she's got this big burden of a job that she's billing hours out, and she knows how many hours she's working. And even to emphasize it, she says, and that doesn't even include commute time. So those of us that have worked a long distance away, we know commute time can eat up a lot of time. That can be a big waste. So here's a person that says, I'm working 70 to 80 hour weeks. I am not including my commute time in that. And I am a single parent. And this is what I have found to work. And that's what we want to focus on today, is the recommendation. So Jacq recommends, one of the things, I'm quoting, I would recommend is to minimize the needs or requirements of anything outside of work, family, and yourself. So what I'm hearing, and you can see if you see the same thing, is that the solution Jacq has found is that she needs to limit her life, and she has focused on 3 areas: work, family, and yourself. And the question becomes, is that valuable information for us? Is that something that we can take home and say, well, if I am in that time crunch category, I should limit things down to work, family, and yourself. And so let's take a look at that briefly and put some thoughts together on priorities and focus, because that's really what she's talking about. She's saying my priority and my focus, and I have cut everything else out of my life. except those three key areas. So our first thought is everyone is unique. And when we teach and train time excellence and implement change, we like to remember that everyone is unique. Your situation is not my situation, is not your neighbor's situation. And usually one priority set doesn't fit everyone. So that recommendation of just focus on these three areas seems to be a valid but specific recommendation for Jacq, but not one that we would just carte blanche say, this is really a good solution for us. We would want to think about our situation and our specifics. The balance is the key. We want to balance what time we do have, and there are techniques to reduce the time. There are techniques that we will learn throughout this show. But right now, Jacq points us to probably one of the starting points is when we really look at our focus. When we crystallize our focus, we now know what time allocations and what things we should be doing. So when we talk about balance, let me give you maybe some tips on how to think about what might be those priorities in your life. And it starts with the word firm. F-I-R-M is the way I remember it. F stands for faith. There are priorities in many people's lives that are faith-based, and we want to think that's inside that category and pull those out and consider those. There are improvement areas, the I in firm, F-I-R-M, the improvement of ourselves, the improvement of others, the improvement of our financial situation, the improvement of the environment, the improvement of the world. All of those can play into this thought. Our relationships. Think about buckets of relationships that are important and really deserve time and need to be at the top of the list. And then finally, the M in firm is mandatory. Think about mandatory things. And what I think you'll find is that these categories are not important as far as arguing over, well, should it be in relationships or should it be in improvement? The key is to not lose sight of a segment of your life that is or should be important and focus on those key areas. And if you were to list those out, if you were to pick the top 7, just to pick a number, what would they look like? And my guess is they're going to be different than Jackie's. They're going to be different than the 3 that Jacq said, hey, I recommend for you to cut these out. And I would say that worked in her life, and what she is telling you is her advice on what worked for her. But I think in your world, you're unique, and you really need to look at the 7 or 8 or 10 priorities in the firm buckets, F-I-R-M, faith, improvement, relationships, and mandatory, and see what is important. From there, you can make great progress at being more effective and making more of a difference in those areas. We will be right back. Time excellence. Maximizing our time to make more of a difference through game-changing organizational, career, and personal growth. Take the next step. Save your spot in our free Time Excellence Training webinar, revealing the 3 phases and 7 steps to your new tomorrow at douglascalvin.com/webinar. Making more of a difference. We're back, and this is a fun piece of today's show. Examples that really motivate us to get out there and look at our time as an opportunity and make a difference. We're going to hear about Barbara And Barbara had an event in her life that drove her in a new direction toward charity, of all things, haircuts. Charity haircuts. How fun is that? So that story is a motivational story of how we can maybe look at our lives and our time opportunities a little differently. Barbara Goodson started a nonprofit called Have Shears Will Travel. Shears as in cutting hair, SHEARS. Have Shears Will Travel. And those that nonprofit has a backstory that is interesting. She says that over the span of 3 decades, she's had a passion for hairdressing, and it led her to a new mission, the formation of a nonprofit. So she was a hairdresser, but as the story goes, she was not working in hairdressing full time. She had let that go by the wayside and was working in an office. And in February of 2015, she relates that I learned that our office was closing its doors. That's due to an economic situation, a downturn in the oil and gas industry, and she'd been there 17 years. Now, 30 years, she told us that she's had her hairdressing license, and so she was given a abrupt change, and one way to look at it was, oh, this is horrible, but what appears to happen is she looked at it as, wow, this could really be an opportunity. This could be something that I might be able to have an impact. So she found that there was a problem and that the guidelines where she lives needed to be changed. You couldn't just go to someone's house because you're licensed, and you couldn't be a stylist and do the work. So she literally took the ball and went to the Texas board and petitioned that hairdressing services within the confines of a person's home would make sense, because some people can't get out of their home. They don't have the capacity. It's a big challenge for whatever reason. And what's amazing is her stepping out there. They agreed. And so they agreed, and she, in her words, was able to make a difference. Sound familiar? She was able to make a difference and helped to change the law, and it made sense. And on top of that, she is now running a nonprofit that you can know is doing benefit for people that need an esteem boost, that are maybe in a retirement old folks home. Maybe people are in a homeless situation for a while. These areas of opportunity is where her nonprofit services. And if you're interested in more about that nonprofit, you can go to her website, haveshearswilltravel.org. Again, that's put it all together, no spaces, haveshearswilltravel.org, and you can see more pictures and you can get the full story. But what a motivation that is, to take an apparent negative situation, turn it into a positive, and take that positive forward and find out, wait, there's a law that I can't even do what I'm trying to do. So you go and you make a change there. You politely point out the opportunity, and the Texas board agreed and said, boy, that makes a lot of sense. We're going to go ahead and do that and make that change. And she was able to move that ministry forward. So I think that's an exciting story, and would hopefully motivate us to look at time not from a perspective of just time and clock time, but look at it from time opportunity. So that's 3 segments that all focus around one thing, and that's our challenge. And our challenge is always to use our time opportunities the best way that we can. Boy, that's encouraging. To know that I shouldn't compare my efforts and my successes or failures with time because my situation is unique with others, but I should be looking at the measure of, given what I've given, how well am I doing with what I've been given? There are challenges that I have that you don't, and there are challenges that you have that I don't, and so we're not in this area. And it helps our self-esteem. It helps us to really know where we're going and to make beneficial impact on others. Actions out of today's show. Well, think about it. Are you in a time-crunched hotspot? Are you a member? If so, there's a high probability you are time-crunched. And if you're in those working categories, children less than 18-year-old category, if you're female, 18 to 49 category, if you're in any of those, plus you're single, this even adds more on top of it. So if you are, there are things that could be done. There is hope. Things can get better. You can make more of an impact today versus what you did yesterday by a few principles and a few thoughts. We want to reflect on what Jacq recommended and learn from it. What are our top priorities? What are the things that we really think are critical? And let's focus on those, not take someone else's actions just because they're doing something, think we have to do it, just because they take their kid to the baseball game 5 days a week doesn't mean we need to. What fits in our life, in our specific situation? What are our top priorities? And finally, let's reflect on what Barbara did. She took a setback and turned it into a time opportunity and truly making more of a difference. How can you benefit from a similar outlook, a similar viewpoint? Important questions, ones that really can help us become more effective and make a difference in more people's lives. So let's think about an action of taking one more step forward, just one more step to improve our time excellence. That would make a difference. And if we step one step at a time, before we know it, we're going to be feeling better about ourselves. We're going to be feeling and knowing that we are doing what we can and really make an impact at work, in our careers, and in our individual lives. Visit us at douglascalvin.com. There is a lot of free information there, links to our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And if you get an opportunity to share this with someone, to retweet, to friend, to comment, all of these are social media interactions, which puts it on more news feeds. Would you participate? Would you help out in just that small way? Well, that brings us to the end of this session, and we want to thank you for watching. I'm Douglas Calvin, and thanks for joining. Until next time, we will see you then.